I'd never done this before, but I hit the curb, peak hour traffic. He was like, are you gonna go? Are you ever gonna go? Like, I wasn't completely in my lane. And I was accelerating, so then I had to like brake and then turn. He was like playing mind games with me, trying to suck me out. He goes, what did you do that for? He didn't tell me that I'd failed. I was about to burst into tears. Oh, that was actually quite effective. Okay, let's start the video. Bug! Oh my god, get out, get out, get out, get out. Okay, are we ready to start the video? Yes, we are. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and not going crazy in your self-isolation, self-quarantining stuff that's going on right now. Crazy world we're living in. As I've been mentioning in some of my past videos, I'm going to try and upload lots of videos on this channel to keep you guys entertained during this crazy time. So yeah, here is a video. Yeah. Here is my first ever story time video. I've always wanted to do a story time video. And I thought, what better time than now, because it's a fairly long, kind of entertaining video that you guys can just sit down and chill with me. Someone commented, oh my gosh, someone commented on my video the other day. It was a really nice comment. Let me try and find it, hang on. Oh yes, Animal Lover 100, who has been subscribed to my channel for so long. So thank you very much. I really appreciate all of your support. I remember I answered some of your questions in like my 200 subscriber Q&A, I think. So you have been subscribed for a very long time. I appreciate you. But they said I love watching your videos. You are such a fun and lively person to be around. Though I'm not really physically with you, I feel like I hang out with you every time I watch one of your videos. And that, I was literally just sitting there smiling for like 10 minutes. That literally made my day. So thank you so much. And I thought, well, maybe we can virtually hang out and just have a chat about my driving test experience. This is such a story time. Oh my goodness. Actually, do you know what also is a story time? Is getting my learner's permit, because I got rejected 3 times because I had the wrong ID, and then my school stuffed up this letter thing that they gave me. It didn't have a letterhead, and so they couldn't verify. Oh my goodness, that was actually, I should do a story time about that, because that was an interesting time. But this story time is about passing my practical driving test when you're in a car with the scary instructor assessor person right next to you and you're trying to get your P plates. And I'm going to be talking about how I failed my first driving test and then I passed my second one, which was good, because I think I probably would have actually fainted from pressure if I had to do it a third time, because I have had a lot of stressful situations in my life, but I have never been more stressed more anxious than I was before my second driving test. Not my first one, but my second driving test. I'll get into all of that, but I literally slept about 2 hours before my second driving test because I was just lying awake in bed, stressing. My heart was beating at the rate of a hummingbird, the rate of a hummingbird, the weight of like you know how hummingbirds go, just like that was how fast my heart was going, literally. Okay, we'll get into that, but okay, let's start from the very beginning. A very good place to start. Comment down below if you know where that reference is from. If you don't, we can't be friends. Just joking, we can, but I'll need to educate you before we can be friends. Anyway, let's start from the very beginning. So, have I even introduced this video? Sometimes I just start talking about the most random things and I don't introduce the video. So this video is a story time. This video is a story time about, I've definitely said this. Have I said this? I don't know. I forgot what I was saying. Well, I'm just going to say it again because I feel like I've already said this. Okay, well, this video is a story time about my driving tests and failing them, and then how I eventually passed, and then it's just a story time, and then at the very end of the video I'm going to give you some tips, 3 tips on how you can pass your driving test first time. Actually, no, just 3 tips on how you can pass your driving test, because I don't know how to pass it first time, because I failed it first time, so can't really give you advice on that. But anyway, let's just get into the story time. I haven't planned this video at all. Normally I have, like, here on my laptop, I have like pointers for my videos. Like, I've literally just filmed 2 videos. I just filmed how to be productive before school, and then I filmed how to look after your mental health in self-isolation, and both of those videos I had like pointers for, but this video I don't, because it's a story time. I don't really need pointers for that, but I have pointers because otherwise I get very off track, and because when anyway, okay, I'm not gonna go off track. Right, so in Australia, the situation with driving is when you turn 16, you can do a test to get your L plates. This is just a written test. It's 30 questions online. It's pretty easy, most people pass. It's just like knowing what road signs mean and stuff. And then you get your L plates when you're 16, and then you have to complete 50 hours of driving before you can get your P plates. And the earliest you can get your P plates is when you turn 17. So even if you've done 50 hours of driving by the time you're 16 and a half, you can't get your Ps until you're 17. And somewhere in there you also have to do a hazard perception test when you're 16. So I did both of those tests and I passed them fine. I passed my L plate test. I got 30 out of 30, subtle flex. That information doesn't like go anywhere or anything. I was really sad. I wanted them to put on my learner's permit that I got 30 out of 30, because I was like, oh yes. Then I passed my hazard perception test fine. You don't actually find out what score you got on that one, but I passed. And then when I turned 17, I was ready to get my P plates. I had done 114 hours of driving. Yes, I did do a lot of driving. I wasn't trying to do a lot of driving. I just seemed to drive everywhere. Like, I would drive to training, to and from training, obviously like with my mum, but she would supervise me driving to training and from training, and to school and from school. And we have to do quite a bit of driving because of where we live. We live kind of far away from school and training. So I just got up lots of driving hours. Yeah, so I was ready to sit my practical driving assessment, which for short is called a PDA. Yeah, so I should probably point out that I had a driving instructor, like a driving teacher, who took me out when I was 16 and gave me some driving lessons. I didn't have too many lessons, and I only got him when I was about 16 and a half, so I didn't have him for that long. Oh, sorry, I just knocked the table. Yeah, so I didn't have him for that long, but I did do a number of lessons with him. And actually, just a piece of advice, I think what worked really well for me was my parents taught me like the very basics. They taught me, you know, how to turn a car on and how to kind of drive it around the roads. But then once I'd mastered the basics of driving, they got me a driving instructor to teach me all of the things that they would be looking for in my PDA, in my driving test. And these are things like making sure you're checking in this mirror and this mirror when you do this. The driving instructor taught me how to parallel park and how to reverse park and how to forward park even. So he taught me all the parking, and then he taught me about the different stages of the PDA. So how you have like stopping for shopping, and you have, what's the other one? And the other one where you have to like turn around and come back, like when you forget your phone and you have to, you know, turn around and go back home again and then turn around again. That one. So he just tells you like all the things that the driving assessors are going to be looking for during your PDA. And so that was really, really good. I had a bunch of lessons with him, turned 17, and he had booked me a test. You have to book them quite a bit in advance, but sometimes your driving instructor, like my driving instructor booked the test for me, so he was able to get me like a slot for my PDA that was sooner than I would have been able to get if I'd just gone on and booked it myself. So he booked it for me. It was like a couple of weeks after my 17th birthday. And okay, so let's just go to the day of the driving test. So my test was at 8:45 a.m. in the morning. So my driving instructor picked me up at around 7:15. I was in my school uniform. I had my school bag, which I put in his boot, and after the driving test we drove to school and he dropped me off at my school. Yeah, so he picked me up at 7:15 and we had an hour lesson before the test. So he kind of took me around. The other good thing about having a driving instructor is that they know where the driving assessors for your PDA will take you for your test. So he took me around all the different areas that I might be taken to drive during my PDA. So yeah, the morning before the test, he took me into one of those areas and we did stopping for shopping, which is where you park, and then we did the turn around, come back one, and we did all of those exercises, and I was very, very nervous. I was like shaking the whole time. Nowhere near as nervous as I was for my second driving test, but we'll get into that in a minute. Yeah, so I was nervous, and I wasn't driving as well as I normally did just because I was so nervous. But yeah, we drove around, did some stuff, and then it was time. You have to be at the test center like half an hour before your test, I think. So at around 8:15, we drove to the test center. We drove to a place that was like just next to the test center, and we parked. Oh, I was driving, so I parked, and we sat in this car for a minute, and he was just talking to me, and he was like, I know you're really nervous, but just relax. You are a really good driver, and I think you're going to pass. He thought I was going to pass first time. He'd told me this before. He'd like told my mum this. He wasn't putting any pressure on me. He is an amazing driving instructor. If you live in Perth, get in touch with me. I can give you his details because he is such a good driving instructor. His name is Scott. I love him, as in like he was like a really good driving instructor. He was super, super nice, didn't put any pressure on me, but he was just confident in my driving ability. He said, like, I had so much driving experience, I could do everything really well. He was like, yeah, you know, I think you're gonna pass, you're gonna do well. And I was like, okay, and then we drove from the place right next to the driving center to the test center, and we drove in, and I reverse parked into like the bay. So there's like these bays that you park in, like if your driving test is the next test. So whatever car you're going to be driving, you park it into the bay. It's for the people who are going to sit the test, and I was going to be driving his car, so I reverse parked his car into the bay. That's a smart thing to do. Make sure you reverse park your car into the bay so that when the test starts you can drive straight out. That makes it easier for you. Otherwise, if you forward parking, then you're going to have to reverse out at the start of your test, and that just opens up more room for error. So I reverse parked in. It wasn't a very good park actually. I'm not good at reverse parking. I can slay parallel parking. Me and parallel parking are like so good. Forward parking I'm okay. Reverse parking, nah. So yeah. Okay, so I arrive at the test center, reverse park badly, get out of the car, and then we go and wait. Oh, no. Then I went to the toilet. I forgot the crucial detail. So yeah, then he was like, do you need to go to the toilet? And I was like, yes, I do, because I always need to go to the toilet because I have a tiny bladder. So he showed me where the toilet was, so I went to the toilet. If you're doing your test at City West in Perth, there is actually a toilet that you can go to. It's not in the test centre, but if you park, you know, in those spots where you park if you're about to do your test, then if you go like towards the coffee shop that's like away from the test centre, if you walk away from the test centre, there's like stairs. You go down the stairs, and then at the end of the stairs go along and turn right. There's like a toilet there. That's just advice if you're like me and you always need to go to the toilet before you do something, because I needed to. So anyway, I went to the toilet, came back up, and he gave me a bottle of water. So sweet. Yeah, and before you like get out of the car, make sure that the steering wheel is at the right height and distance from you. Your chair is like, your car seat is right. The mirrors are all correct. Like you can see properly everything. Just make sure everything's right, and then get out of the car. Yeah, so I went to the toilet and then came back up, and then we went into the test center and we just stood there waiting. I was just shaking and he was just standing next to me. And then, so I think 8:45 is possibly the second test of the day. There's one at 7:15, I know, because my second driving test was at 7:15. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so all the driving assessors were away. Like the driving assessors weren't there. And then at around like 8:35 or 8:40, they all kind of like, they just kind of like randomly started coming out. And they would just call your name. So there's about maybe 4 or 5 other people doing your driving test at the same time as you. Oh no, my battery's gonna die. No, okay, oh no. Okay, I just charged my camera battery for like 10 minutes, so let's hope it doesn't die again. It probably will, but anyway. Right, continuing with the story. So the driving assessors just kind of all come out, like kind of one by one, but like one will come out and another will come out. It's just that they kind of all come out within the space of 5 minutes, and they have this little notepad thing and they call your name. So one of them will be like John, and poor nervous John, who's waiting over with his mother over here, he goes over and he's like, oh, and then you know, so John got called, and then Mary got called, and then Destiny got called, whatnot. You know, people got called up by their driving instructors and they were like showing them their license and stuff. I was probably, I think I was the third or fourth person to get called up. This dude comes out, this scary dude. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this dude comes out, the driving assessor, and my driving instructor who's standing next to me, like he draws, like he goes, and then he's about to say something to me, and then the driving assessor goes, Tia. And I could sense something with that was up with my driving instructor, and I looked at him and he just looked at me, and it was like he gave me like an encouraging facial expression. And so I walked over and I was so nervous. And this dude, okay, so my driving assessor the first time for my first test, for this test I'm telling you about, he was not a nice person, not a vibe, did not get on with him. Okay, so I walked over to him, and I was expecting, all the other driving assessors was like, hi, how are you? My name's Ted, and I'm gonna be doing your driving assessment today. And anyway, I just walked over to him, and he was like, license. And I was like, so I gave him my learner's permit, and then he was like, logbook. And so then I gave him my logbook, and he like flicked through it and was like, nah, and then did this signing thing. And he was like, right, let's go. And we were the first people to leave. So all these other driving assessors had come out first, and they'd called out whoever they were assessing, but they were still like introducing themselves and nicely going through the logbook. But no, my person just was like, he didn't even introduce himself. So he didn't even say his name. Like, it was quite rude actually. Anyway, so we were the first people to leave, and I walked past my driving instructor on the way out, and I was like, ah, and he was like encouraging facial expression. And I was like, oh my goodness, I do not like this person. I do not like this assessor. I do not like this person. And so we walked out, and we walked to the cars, and I showed him which one was mine. I had the car keys. And so I opened it and I unlocked it, and he was like, okay, get in the driver's seat. And so I got in the driver's seat, and he was like, okay, shut the door. And so I shut the door, and then he went around the back of the car. And what they do at the start of your driving test is they have to make sure that your indicators are working. So, oh no, he went around the front of the car first, and they have to make sure your indicator lights and your brake lights are working. So he signaled left, which meant to indicate left, so I indicated left, and he checked it. Did the same with the right, and then he went around the back, and I did that and that with the brake, and then with the brake lights. But he was just very unclear. I couldn't really hear him, and so I wound down the window so I could hear him better. But he had an accent, so it wasn't an Australian accent. It was some kind of, I don't know what accent it was, which it's not a problem having an accent, but it just made it extra hard for me to understand what he was saying. He had quite a strong accent. And anyway, so I did all the signaling fine, all the lights were fine, and he got in, and he was like, said some official stuff. They have this thing that they have to read out, basically saying like, I will be assessing your driving test today. No, this will be recorded. Are you okay with this? Sign here. And then I had to sign on the iPad, and then he was like, okay, let's go for a drive. And I was like, can we please not? And no, I didn't say that. So I turned on the car, and we drove off, and we drove out of the car park, and I was being very careful in the car park, and then we left the car park and we went around, and I was so nervous. And he always gave me like directions quite late, so obviously I don't know where I'm going, and he's directing me as to where I'm going. And I'm trying to remember, this was like a year ago, so I'm just trying to remember. So we went out the car park, we drove along, and he was like, okay, turn left, then just follow the road. And I was like, okay. So I turned left, and then I had to turn onto a main road, so I turned left, and I'd never done this before, but I hit the curb when I was turning onto the main road. I think I was just trying to like kind of not go too far out. I was trying to not go too far out, but I hit the curb going onto the main road just a little bit, and he was like, "Oh, try not to hit the curb." And I was like, what do you think I'm doing? Do you think I'm trying to hit the curb? Like, obviously I'm trying to not hit the curb. It was just, yeah. Anyway, and so we got these traffic lights, and oh yeah, I'd just been to Melbourne. No, I'd just been to Sydney. I'd just been at Nationals. Like, oh, this is right. Yeah, I got back from Nationals on the Sunday, and I had my driving test on the Monday morning, so I was very tired. Anyway, so we got to the traffic lights, and my watch was still on Sydney time, and the traffic lights were red. And while we were waiting at the traffic lights, he goes, "Why is your watch on the wrong time?" And I was like, "Oh, it's because I was at Sydney for Nationals." And he was just like asking me all these questions about why my watch was showing the wrong time, and it was distracting me so much. Anyway, so then we kept driving, and whenever he wasn't giving me a direction and I was meant to just like go straight, he was like, "Just follow the road. Just follow the road." And he kept saying it, which is like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just kind of funny. Anyway, and then okay, so then I had to he is sneaky. He took me through these really weird roads, and then I had to turn and it's like 9 o'clock in the morning right now, okay? So it's peak, no, probably like 8 or 8:50 or something. It's peak hour traffic in the morning in the city, and I had to turn onto a 4-lane carriageway, like a 4-lane road, and there was so many cars coming, and they're going really fast. They were going like 70 kilometers per hour, and there was so much traffic coming, and I had to turn onto it, and so I was just waiting there for ages and ages, waiting for all the traffic to come, and I was like waiting until there was a safe enough gap, and there was not a safe enough gap for like a while. And halfway through the waiting, he was like, "Are you gonna go? Are you ever gonna go?" And I was like, "I'm waiting for the cars to come past. Like, if I go now, I'm gonna have a crash." So I was like, oh my goodness. So then after he said that, I kind of like zoomed into a gap, because he was like, "Are you ever gonna go?" And I was like, oh my god, I better go then. So I kind of like went into like this small gap, and he was like, "Whoa." And I was like, well, you're like playing mind games with me, trying to suck me out. I don't know. Anyway, and he was like, "Okay, turn left." And then I had to turn left straight away. And I did quite a jerky turn, because I just like turned onto a 70-kilometer-per-hour road, and all the cars were going really fast, and I'd gone into quite a small gap. So I had to go fast so the car behind me didn't crash into me. But then he was like, "Okay, now turn left off the road." And this was like 20 meters after I turned on, and I was accelerating, so then I had to like brake and then turn. Honestly, this doesn't really need mentioning, but I was getting an automatic license, not a manual, so not that anyone cares, but I'm just letting you know. Anyway, so we turned off the road. Might as well have not even gone on it in the first place, because we just got off it 20 meters later. So I hadn't been driving all that well, because I'd hit the curb, and then I hadn't turned onto the road properly apparently. Then I turned off quite quickly. And I was just very shaky and nervous, and so my driving wasn't like amazing. It wasn't bad, it wasn't unsafe, but it just wasn't perfection. Anyway, so then we just drove around these roads for a little bit, and then, okay, I'm going to have to draw a diagram now that I'm thinking about it. I'm just thinking about it now. I'm just gonna borrow, no, well, I'm just borrowing your sticky notes. Okay, so then he took me to this is where he tripped me up. This is where I failed, okay? He took me to this really, like, this, hang on, I'm just gonna show you. It's like an intersection that you would like never, like, come up against it. Like, you would just, it's like, see this? Okay, so this is like a road. So there's a road going along here, and this is the main road going along here. Okay, and this is where I was going, so I needed to go, oh, there wasn't any lines there, but I've just drawn them. Okay, so I came along here, I was driving along here, and I just had to go straight ahead. So I was driving along here, and I'd never driven like along this street before, and I didn't really know where I was supposed to go, because I got to here, and like I didn't know where I was supposed to go, because I can't just keep going straight ahead, because there's no road there. But he didn't say anything, so I was like, oh, I must have to go across there, because that was kind of like straight ahead. But I didn't know if I had to turn left onto here, then turn right, or if I just like went straight across. And I was a bit confused, so I waited here for like, not that long, for like 5 seconds, and I was like, okay, he's not saying anything, so I guess I just have to go. So I went across, but I went across like that, I think, or maybe like that, and I just skimmed, like I wasn't completely in my lane, so I went kind of like across the line there. And I think actually, there was like a solid white line there, so I went across here, and I crossed the solid white line accidentally, because I kind of went like, oh, my camera battery's flashing. I kind of went like that, you know, like that, across the solid white line and then into the lane. So I crossed a solid white line accidentally. One of my tires was in the wrong lane of the road for a second. So as soon as I did that, he goes, "What did you do that for?" And I was like, no, what have I done? And I was like, so then I was like just freaking out. He literally goes, "What did you do that for?" And I was like, what? I don't know. Because I didn't know what I did. I didn't know. I'd like crossed the white line a tiny bit. So anyway, then he was like, "Okay, pull over up there." So then it was like up here. And I pulled over, and he was like, "Do you know what you just did?" And I was like, no. And he was like, "You just went across a solid white line." And then he kind of like explained to me what I'd done. It was good that he explained to me what I'd done, but the way he said it, he was just like, after his explanation, he was like, "Why did you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know, sorry." And then he was like, "Okay," and he was just like sighing. And at this, he didn't tell me that I'd failed, because they don't tell you that you've failed, because apparently my driving instructor told this: if you fail, they never tell you that you failed until you get back to the test center, because otherwise you might just like refuse to drive them back, and you might just say, "Okay, get out of my car, I'm driving home." Not that, I don't know if that's true, but apparently. Anyway, he didn't tell me I'd failed, but he was just like, he just sighed, and he was like, "Okay, go off and turn around that roundabout and go like back the way we came." And I was like, oh well, obviously we're going back to the test center, and obviously I failed. So I turned around the roundabout and went back, and apparently I didn't when I crossed back over, he was like, "Oh, you did it again." And I was like, oh. At this stage, because this is the thing with his, like, he had a very heavy accent, and I was so stressed and upset that I'd just like done something bad in my driving test. I didn't understand his explanation. I didn't understand what he was saying, and so I accidentally did the same thing on the way back. And he was like, "Oh, you just did it again, no." And I'm like, ah. At this stage, I was about to burst into tears. I was literally holding it together by a thread. And we drove back like the quickest way back to the drive. Bug, did you see that? Come for me. We drove back the quickest route back to the driving test center. My camera battery is flashing again, so I'm gonna have to charge it and come back and film after lunch, because it's lunchtime now and I need to charge my battery for longer. So hopefully I pick up the story okay. Okay, hello, I am back. Camera battery is charged, hopefully. I just had falafels for lunch. I made falafels the other day for the first time, and well, it was out of a packet mix, but still, they are so good. Love falafels. Anyway, continuing with the story time. So, drove straight back to the test center, got to the test center, and he was like, "Just park anywhere." And so I just parked in like, or anywhere out of those 5 bays that you park if you're having a test. And so I parked in the bay, and because I hadn't even had time to do any of the exercises in my test. Like, I failed before I'd even had a chance to do parking or to do the turn around come back exercise. So I'd only been gone about 15 minutes, and while we all do our driving tests, the driving instructors of all the people who are taking their tests go and have coffee at the coffee shop that's like right next to where you park at the end of your test. And so I pulled up, and I was the first person back. So I pulled up back in the car park after about 15 minutes. And it's obvious if you come back after 15 minutes that you've failed, because the tests normally take like around half an hour to 40 minutes. So if you come back after 15 minutes, you've pretty much failed. And so I just came and he was like, park, and I parked. And turned the car off, got out, and I saw my driving instructor. He was having coffee with all of the other driving instructors, and he was like, oh. He was like, he just had this expression on his face, like he knew I'd failed because I'd come back so early. And so got out of the car, and the driving assessor got out of the car, that mean dude, and my driving instructor walked over to me. The instructor is the person who like teaches you to drive and you have all the lessons with, and then the assessor is the person who like is employed by the Department of Transport to test you, and they sit in the car during the test. In case you didn't know that. I should have probably said that earlier, but oh well. Yeah. So my driving instructor came over to me and the assessor who had just gotten out of the car, and he was like, oh no, what happened? And I was like, I was still traumatized, and I still didn't know I had failed. Like I knew I'd failed, but I hadn't been told that I'd failed, because the assessor was just mean. Anyway, so I was like, long story. I didn't say that. I was just like, and then the driving assessor was like, he flipped his iPad and showed it to me, and it had like a third of the squares filled out, and they were pretty much all red. There was like one green one, and he was like, I have to try again next time or something, and then just walked off. Like he never even told me I'd failed. I really wanted him to just be like, yeah, I'm really sorry, I wasn't able to pass you today, maybe work on this and come back next time. But oh no, oh my gosh, I remember what happened now. Oh yeah, so he didn't tell me I'd failed. My driving instructor was like, what happened? And the driving assessor was like, well, she crashed into a curb, she crossed a white line and drove the wrong, she drove the wrong way, like she drove in the wrong lane the wrong way or something, and because I'd literally been in the wrong lane for like half a second. And he just like said this bunch of like, he just like blurted out this bunch of bad stuff that I'd done in this like really really rude way. And then he just clicked this thing on his screen and he was like, better book in another test, and then walked off. And I was like, and that was it. It was so rude. And obviously all of the people, like he's been doing like driving assessing for a while. He knows that the people who he's assessing are young, nervous not young teenagers, but nervous teenagers, nervous young people. You need to be nice. Like being nice is, you gotta be nice anyway to everyone, but especially in that situation, like there's no point being mean. That was like, that literally, and that is what made me so nervous for my next driving test, because it was a horrendous experience. It was honestly awful. It was so awful. I was scarred from that experience. So my driving instructor was like, oh no, that doesn't sound very good. And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, okay, well, let's get in the car, we'll drive to school. Do you want to drive or do you want me to drive? And I was like, I'll drive. And so he was like, okay, cool. So I got in the driver's seat and he was like, okay, shall we drive to the place where you failed the test? And so we drove to the place where I'd failed, this little intersection here. And I showed him where it was, and he said, okay, so this is what you did, and he explained to me how to do it right, and then we did it right a couple of times, and that was good. So he taught me, he identified what I did wrong, and he showed me how to do it right, which is the point of having a driving instructor. And then I drove us to school, and he dropped me off at school, or I dropped myself off in his car, and he was like, he said at school that he was really proud of me for, after the driving test, saying that I would drive to school, because he said lots of people say, oh no, I'm not driving, like, and they get him to drive, but he said like he was proud of me for getting back in the car and driving again. So that was nice. I still was holding in tears by this point, because during like the car ride on the way to school, I was talking to him about how the test went, and he was kind of dissecting it with me. I still hadn't cried, but I was about to cry. And so I got out of the car, and it was like the last week of term. It was the last week of term 1 last year. So it's almost been exactly a year. so I got my school bag and I was like, okay, thank you. And he was like, book in another lesson with me. And I was like, yeah, okay, more money, huh? But yeah, so then I took my school bag, walked to my locker, and it was recess time. I arrived just as recess was starting, and so I put my bag in my locker, and then I went into the bathrooms and just cried for like 5 minutes. No, I remember. I was at my locker, and my mum texted me, and she was like, did you pass? Question mark, exclamation mark. Because everyone just expected that I would pass because I was a really good driver, and I should have, no, I don't want to say I should have passed, because obviously I did do the wrong thing and I did fail for a reason. Like, I shouldn't have passed, but it was expected that I was passed because I was a good driver and I was capable of passing. Yeah. So she thought I was going to pass, and I've never really failed anything before, so she thought she just kind of assumed I was going to pass. And then I just sent her a text back that said no, and then I was like, I'm sorry, and then sent that as well. And then I went into the bathroom and cried. I don't know why I said I'm sorry, but I don't know why I said that, because like she wasn't putting any pressure on me at all. She literally didn't put any pressure on me at all. She was really, really, really good about it. And I didn't need to be sorry to her, but I just kind of sent that. And she was like, oh, and then she sent me a text, and she was like, oh, no, it's totally fine, don't worry. It takes heaps of people time. We have plenty of time. We don't need to pass it anytime soon. It doesn't matter at all. We're just gonna have more lessons, and whenever you're ready, you'll do it, and it'll be good. So she was like super, super comforting. But yeah, I was just crying in the toilets for like 5 minutes. And then I just stood there waiting for my eyes to stop being red, so it didn't look like I was crying. And then and then recess ended and I went to class. So that is my first driving, that is my first driving test. Now we move on to my second driving test. So in between my first test and my second test, I pretty much didn't tell anyone that I'd failed. My second test was like a week and a half after my first test. My driving instructor booked me another test for like 3 weeks time, but I was like, no, can I have it a little bit earlier please? Because I wanted to have it before, like well before mock exams, so that I could drive myself to and from school for mock exams, because they were halfway through term 2. And I wanted to, if I failed, I wanted to be able to then have another test before it and try and pass it before mock exams. Anyway, so I was like, I asked my driving instructor if he could get me another slot that was a bit earlier, and I think he got me a slot literally like a week and a half after my first driving test that I failed, and you can't have a test until 1 week later. So he got me one like 1.5 weeks later, which was great. So that was in the school holidays, and between my first and my second driving test, I pretty much didn't tell anyone that I had failed. Not because I didn't want people to know that I'd failed. I'm happy for people to know that I failed, but I just wanted to, I wanted to pass first before I told people that I'd failed my first one, just because I didn't want people to kind of talk about it and ask me about it, because it would just kind of stress me out. And also, I just didn't want the pressure of people being like, oh, okay, good luck for your second driving test, hopefully you pass. I don't know, I just didn't want that. And I think that's totally fine. Like, you don't have to tell anyone. I told my mum and my dad, and then somehow, I don't exactly know how, but somehow my extended family knew. And we had like an Easter celebration that weekend, and I was talking to them about, like, I was happy for my extended family to know, because they're like family. So I was talking to them about it that weekend, and we were all having a go at the driving assessor. But I didn't tell anyone when my next driving test was, because I didn't want the pressure for it. I'm happy for people to know about this stuff like after it's done, but I just wanted to get it done and pass it first before I talk to everyone about it. So anyway, nobody really knew apart from my family that I'd failed my first test, which was good. I liked it that way. I didn't tell people that I was having my driving test at all, my first one. I didn't tell them I was having it, because I just didn't want people to know, and I didn't want people, because once people know you're having it, they're going to ask if you passed or failed, and then if you failed, you have to say you failed, and then I just wanted to go through it first. So anyway, let's go on to my second driving test. So my second driving test was at 7:15 a.m. In the morning in school holidays. So I went to sleep the night before, I had a couple of lessons. I think maybe I had 2 or 3 lessons between my first driving test and my second driving test. And it's the night before my second driving test. And I pretty much didn't sleep at all. Like that night I was so nervous. I have done like a lot of things in my life that make me very nervous. I'm an elite middle distance runner, so I do lots of running races. I've run at like Australian national championships heaps and heaps of times. I've won medals at these championships. I've been in a place where I am expected to win, and I've like to win the Australian national championships, and I've been very like, I've felt a lot of pressure and I've been very nervous. So I've been like in situations where I've been very nervous, and I've also like changed schools a lot, moved across the country various times. I've been in lots of situations. Stop texting me. My dad has to call me. Oh, this always happens when I'm filming videos. Always happens. Literally always happens. Anyway, while I'm waiting for him to call me, yeah, so basically I've been in heaps of situations where I've been really nervous, but I don't think I've ever been as nervous as I was before my second driving test. Oh, now he's calling me. Hello?
Hi, babes.
Hi.
How are you?
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
What's happening there? I'll just left business.
I'm in the middle of filming a YouTube video.
Okay. What about?
About my driving test experiences. Okay, hopefully that is the last interruption we have today. Right, just need to brush my hair so it's nice and brushed. Okay, so it's like half an hour later now. I had a half an hour chat with my dad, so I've forgotten what I was saying. Pretty sure. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I was so nervous before my second driving test, and I think what made me so nervous was the fact that, like, with a running race, I'm very nervous like before the start of the race, but as soon as the gun goes, then it's just the race, and I'm not nervous like during the race. But the driving test is so long and drawn out, and there's so much time to think during the actual driving test, and I'm still so nervous throughout the whole driving test, and the fear of that made me super nervous the night before, and having that really bad experience with my first driving test made me so stressed and nervous for my second driving test. So yeah, I literally got about 2 hours sleep that night. I was just lying in bed, like sweating, shaking, my heart was beating at 1,000,000 miles per hour. I just could not sleep. I was so nervous. And I had to wake up at 5:30 a.m. because my driving test was at 7:15 a.m. and so my driving instructor was picking me up at 5:45 a.m. Wait, no, the test is at 7, wait, or was the test at 7:45 a.m. and he picked me up at 6:15 a.m. What time is the first? No, it's 7:15, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, it was early. I had to wake up at like 5:30, so I literally got sleep from like 3:30 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. Not very much at all. I was so tired, and my driving instructor actually suggested that my mum came to this test as well. He said, like, bring your mum to this test because apparently if like him and if my mum is there as well at the start and the driving assessor sees that, apparently he like, it's more slightly like subconsciously more likely to pass me because my mum's there as well. I don't know how true that is, but he just said to bring my mum along and it worked. So my mum, so yeah, I went with my driving instructor. I met him at the front of my house and I got in the car and we had the same hour lesson before the test, and we got to the test center. And oh yeah, in my hour lesson before the test, I was so shaky and nervous, and we got to the test center and we met my mum there, and we both went, and my mum and my instructor and me, and we waited outside. The test center. I also went to the toilet before this test as well, and then we waited outside the test center. This time, because it was the very first test, so I had the very first test of the day, at 7 something a.m. So you didn't actually wait inside the driving centre because the driving centre wasn't open yet. You had to wait outside. So me and all the other nervous people waited outside the driving test centre, and all the assessors then came out and they called our names like they did last time, and I was just praying that I didn't get the same assessor as I had for my first test. Because, oh yeah, I keep forgetting details. After my first test, my driving instructor said, I feel really sorry for you that you got that driving assessor. He was the one person who I didn't want you to get, because he is notorious for being really harsh, really picky, and he takes you to super tricky places that like that road that I went to where there's hardly any of those roads around. Like, I've never seen one before. He takes you to places like that just to try and fail people. So my driving instructor said I was really unlucky to get that assessor. He was, yeah, that's why he like drew that sharp intake of breath as soon as I got that, like as soon as the person called out my name in the first driving test, because he was like, oh, he was about to turn to me and say that's the bad one, but then I got called up and he was like, oh no, now she's got the bad one. And so I'm not making that as an excuse to say that's why I didn't pass, but I'm just saying like he is extra harsh, and so I had my fingers and toes crossed that I didn't get him. And this dude walks out and he calls my name, and I was like, I think I was the first, no I wasn't, I think I was the second person to be called out, and it wasn't the same person as the first time. I was like, hallelujah, thank goodness. And this dude looked really nice, and I went over to him and I didn't need my logbook. That's how you can tell if someone has already failed a driving test or multiple driving tests. On your second test, you don't need to bring your logbook because they've already verified you've done your hours. So I just had my license, and I went up to him, gave it to him, and he was like, okay, let's go to the car. And I was like, okay, cool. So we went to the car. I was still so nervous, but the guy was really nice. And he said, okay, now just get in the car. I'm just going to check your indicators and brakes are working. So we did the indicator brake check. Then he got into the car, read out the piece of information, and he said something that was like, I can't remember what he said, but he just said something like, don't stress, it's all good, we're just going to go for a drive. And I was like, oh. And so we drove out of the test center. He took me to a completely different place than I went last time. He took me to the place that I was most comfortable at. He took me to, I did my test at City West, and he took me to the area like around Cambridge Street, which is it's a really nice area because it's not in the city. It's more kind of residential area. It's so much easier to drive around there. So he took me to that area and we drove around the streets, and then he was like, okay, now we're going to do the stopping for shopping. No, he was like, okay, we're going to do the turn around, come back, forgot your phone exercise, that one. And I was like, okay. So, and I did that exercise and it was all good. And I did it by like, I turned around by going into a driveway, then reversing out and then coming back. And that was all good. And then we drove around for a little bit more. He was really nice. And then he got me to do the turnaround exercise again. But this is the one place where I tripped up in this test. I didn't know where to turn around. I should have just done it in a driveway, but all the driveways, like, I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, he was like, okay, we need to turn around and go back this way. And I was like, okay. And I just kept driving and I just kept driving. And then I got to a T-junction and I was like, oh my God, okay, I need to turn around. But I couldn't. So then I just like turned onto a different road and I kept going and I kept going, and he didn't say anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail. I'm going to fail now because he's asked me to turn around, and I've just kept driving. And so eventually, way up the road, I crossed another street, and then I found a driveway to turn around into, and then went back, all the way back the way I'd came. And he didn't say anything, but like, yeah, I was like, oh no, I think I failed now. So, because that was like, kind of, it was just really awkward. Anyway, so then we continued the test. He drove me in, well, he directed me into a car park, and it was like 7 a.m. in the morning. There were no cars in this car park, and he was like, okay, just do a forward park anywhere. And I was like, okay. And so I just parked and he was like, okay, cool, now reverse out. And then we drove back to the test centre. And we got back to the test centre and my test only lasted like 20 or 25 minutes. It was really, really short. I was the first one back. No, I wasn't the first one back because some people had failed. Oh, I have another funny story to tell you about that in a minute. I wasn't the first one back, but I was like one of the earlier ones back. I was the first person back who had passed. And I drove back in and he was like, okay, just park. And so I parked in there. I parked in the driving test centre base. And I got out of the car and my mum and my driving instructor were at the coffee shop having coffee, and so they saw me and they came up, and my driving instructor didn't know if I'd passed or not because I came back quite early. My test was quite short, and he was like to the driving assessor, oh, how did she go? And the driving assessor showed me the screen of his iPad and it was pretty much all green apart from one red square, which I presume was from that one place where I tripped up. And my driving he just showed me the iPad screen and my driving instructor was like, oh, that's really good. And I was like, does that mean I passed? Like, it's so weird, they just show the screen, they don't tell if you pass or fail. And I was like, oh, does that mean I passed? And he was like, I think she did pretty well or something. There was only one place where she tripped up, and my mum was like, well, does that mean she passed? And he was like, yes, she passed. And I was like, oh my goodness, yes. I was so happy. Just not bad. I was just so happy that I didn't have to go through that again. I do not think I could have done a third test. I was traumatized from my first experience, but my second test experience was so much better. The guy was super, super lovely. He was really nice, and after my test my instructor said that he's a fairly new tester. He's a fairly new driving assessor, and he's pretty nice, and because he's new he's not being like too harsh yet, and he's just a nicer person anyway. And so yeah, I passed and I had a much better test experience the second time, and I was so, so happy and also very tired. And yeah, then I said, so because it was such an early morning test, the driving centre was actually still, or the licensing, like Department of Perth, Department of Transport, Perth, the thingy, the centre, driving centre was not open yet, so I had to wait in the cafe for like half an hour or 45 minutes for the test centre to open so I could go in and then actually get my license. Oh no, my camera battery is flashing again. No. Okay, I'm just gonna continue until it dies. So I went into so I said goodbye to my driving instructor because my mum was there, so he was like, I can either take you home or she can take you home, and I was like, oh, I'm all good. She can take me home if you wanna, because otherwise he would have had to wait around for like an hour. So I was like, thank you so much for everything, said goodbye to my driving instructor, and then I went and waited with my mum in the cafe, and while I was in the cafe she told me this story, which is the story I said I needed to tell you about. Another guy who was having his test at the same time as me, and the driving assessor took him to his car, and they have to like type in the number plate on their iPad, and they typed in the number plate and it was his mum's car, and the number plate wasn't registered. It's like registration had run out, and the driving assessor was like, oh well, you can't do your test. And so then the boy and his mum had to wait until the test centre opened so they could go in and re-register the license plate, and he didn't get to do his test. So that's just a funny little unfortunate story for him. Anyway, so I waited with my mum in the cafe for ages. I was so, so tired because I had no sleep. Called my dad who was in Melbourne. He was really happy. And then went into the test centre when it opened, got my license, got P plates, and I drove my mum to work, dropped her off at work, and drove myself home. My very first time driving by myself in a car. And then I had physio later that day, so I drove myself to physio, drove myself home, and just really enjoyed having my license. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking because this video has been going on for so long and my camera battery is about to die. But thank you so much for watching this story time. Can't believe that anyone would actually get to this point in the video. But if you have, comment a car emoji so that I know that you've got to this point in the video. Comment that down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has been entertaining for you and given you a little slight bit of happiness or just a little break, or you've just enjoyed watching it in this crazy period of self-isolation and self-quarantine. Hopefully it's made you feel like you have a little bit of company and it's given you a nice break and made you smile, maybe. If it hasn't, then smile right now. Smiling is good. Okay, anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel down below. I'm uploading heaps of videos at the moment to keep you guys entertained during the crazy coronavirus time. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video. My voice really hurts from talking. I've already filmed 2 videos before this and then this video is like an hour long, so I'm kind of dead. Alright, I'll see you soon. Just realized I forgot to give you my advice for how to pass your driving test, so I'm just gonna say it really quickly. Number 1, get a good driving instructor. That does make a difference. Number 2, smile and be confident during the test. And you don't have to smile the whole time, but just be confident and act like you know what you're doing, because fake it till you make it. And 3, don't stress, don't panic. It's all good and it's totally normal to fail. It doesn't matter. It is totally normal. Most people fail first time. It doesn't matter at all. You can just reset the test again. You can reset it as many times as you want. It's all good. Really, I'm taking from someone who has panicked a lot before the test. My camera battery just died, so I'm filming this last bit on my phone. But yeah, it didn't do me any good to stress or panic. So just chill, relax. You are so much more likely to do better on your driving test if you chill and relax and don't be stressed. You're much more likely to perform well. And it's also just better for you because it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you fail. You can just try again and again and again and you'll get there eventually. And it's good practice. So yeah, if you have any more questions or comments, let me know down below. Thank you for watching and I'll see you really soon. Stay safe. Bye. I also just had to refilm that section because the first time I filmed it on slow-mo. I'm so dumb. Okay, bye.